Dear Christian Bobin, please allow me to address this letter to you with the same humility and feverishness that I would have had if you had still been among our beings of flesh and bones. I have just finished Un Bruit de Balançoire, within which I spent a day and a half. Then I started in Petite Robe de Fête, which I was unable to continue. It seems I need a little rest between your books. You seem to say that they are nothing, but this nothing speaks loudly. For in addition to speaking, they seem to make one speak. That is precisely how I think they truly speak. Indeed, this swallow's nest that you have built has welcomed words in me, which are now agitating like the sun-drunk gnats that you describe so well. Here I am, bubbling with life inside the nest, and my desire to get out temporarily overrides the irresistible comfort of returning soon to nestle there. I haven't read much of Une Petite Robe de Fête, but the preface urged me to respond. Is it my on a short fuse size aspect, as I often heard as a child, that is making me say these words? Possibly. But I think it's more about a deep desire to communicate with you, trying to bring you my own testimony about this inexpressible feeling of another world. Before I go on, please don't think that I'm imagining myself communicating with your spirit through this letter. Like you, I think, I do not believe in spirits except in poems. Nor do I regret that I didn't have the time to write it while you were alive, for in that case this letter would be tinged with man-to-man communication, whereas to speak of this subject I prefer that the poems do so between themselves. You say in the preface that those who never read are a taciturn people, and that he or she who is without reading lacks the lack. These sentences immediately took me back to my childhood, devoid of books, but not devoid of words and lack. I was one of those children and teenagers who read for their school career, pushed by the pressure of exam to turn the last page without skipping 3 chapters. I sometimes got caught up in the game and some readings touched me, but few of those imposed by the school system really marked me. I do remember the poems recited by my French teacher, however, especially those of Baudelaire, which gave me my first shivers of the soul. I would sweep the class with my eyes, sometimes even turning around, excited at the idea of seeing my classmates just as overwhelmed, so drunk with joy that I was incredulous that it was never the case. I took their soulful thrill home with me, blurry drafts of verses that often came to their definition just before sleep, urging me to write them in haste before succumbing to it, on loose sheets piling up in a tenderly chaotic teenage bedroom. I needed a single Baudelaire poem to loosen the tongue of my heart for weeks on end. A less obvious reading to my soul, on the other hand, only brought me boredom or vague distraction, so I suddenly ended up impulsively associating books with the heaviness of thought when it plunges into the murky waters of a story that doesn't speak directly to it. But it was necessary to feed this lack you speak of. It was necessary to call from this emptiness. And the music was there, immediately accessible. From the very first notes, I had the unshakable certainty that the work would sing as close to my emptiness as possible. For a young girl with a mild attention deficit, it was an effective, instantaneous, uncompromising way to leave your life, to exchange it for the spirit of the dream, the flame of the wind, as you so admirably write. You lived in your books and I lived in the songs. I lived in the first chords of Claude Michel Chambert's Le Premier Pas, whose piece started from the second chord, by the time my astonished soul found the record button of my cassette recorder. You know, these first notes that suddenly install a soft silence in the being, as it is the heart that prepares to listen. I lived in the love stories that Pierre Bachelet confided to my juvenile ear, like a benevolent grandfather who doesn't know that he has taught the child the most beautiful adult life she will always dream of living. Later, when music became mobile, I lived in it alongside the real world, equipped with headphones nestled in the hollow of my ears. With hindsight, I say to myself that this was perhaps a mistake on my part, an excess. How to let the void be called if it has the illusion to be filled permanently by a life which chooses to believe itself a cinema with its multiple soundtracks? However, although I believe that it has cost me a certain creativity, I'm looking at this excess with empathy and tenderness, because I know that it comes from the imperturbable love, the crazy love for the poem that your words generously ennoble. The words carried by a melody having the same emotional trajectory as them pierce you dangerously, and even when the words temporarily leave the music the time of an instrumental passage, the latter still contains their imprint. They continue to voice their reading aloud, just as the lyrics forever belong to the musical notes that help bring them into being. Moreover, it happened to me to perceive the unspeakable language of entirely instrumental works with more precision than words. But your writings touch the same unspeakable, and we join in this sublime and musical abyss. Your words are the essence of this music when we take away its noise. And that's how I'm ending this letter, confiding in you that I had to respond to your preface, not out of stubborn opposition, but out of deep reconnaissance.